The Nowata Methodist Church is happy to produce a lot of different content for the edification of Christ's church throughout the world. This daily segment that you're listening to right now corresponds with the Daily Bible Reading Challenge, which is hosted by Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho. If you want to download the list of readings that they publish for yourself or learn more about this challenge, this initiative, go to biblereading.christkirk.com. I'm Jeffrey Rickman. I'm the pastor here in Nowata, and I read from the Berean Standard Bible, which you can also find at berean.bible. Consider subscribing to this podcast to be a part of this daily effort to grow in familiarity with and love of God's holy word. Let's dive in for today.
Hey there, I'm Jeffrey Rickman. I'm joining you from Arkansas. I usually join you from Oklahoma, but my family's taking a trip to Georgia for Thanksgiving, and so we're here in an Airbnb where we're all kind of in the same space. So you're going to hear a little bit of background noise today. It's not as bad for you as it is for me, actually. I've already tried to record a couple of times, and it was so loud behind me, but I listened to it on here, and you can hear my daughter right now, but not as much as I can hear her. So anyway, hopefully this is bearable for you. Just before we get started yesterday I had the joy of speaking with a person, came up to me after a funeral and said, I do the daily scripture readings with you all the time, and it's been such a good thing for me. And I just want to say, I see the viewership on this, and I know there's several dozen people who join me every day, and I'm just really glad if you're one of them, and I hope this is a blessing to you, and I hope it continues to be a blessing to you. There's just nothing better than knowing the mind of God, and that's the purpose of Scripture, is to reveal God's mind, His Word, His Spirit to us, and so I pray that blessing upon you. All right, so we are in 1 Samuel, and so I'm going to start you off there, and let's see, I need to go back over here to my program for the transition. All right, here we go. 1 Samuel, it's chapter 11. Soon Nahash the Ammonite came up and laid siege to Jabesh Gilead. All the men of Jabesh said to him, "Make a treaty with us, and we will serve you." But Nahash the Ammonite replied, "I will make a treaty with you on one condition, that I may put out everyone's right eye and bring reproach upon all Israel." "Hold off for 7 days," replied the elders of Jabesh, "and let us send messengers throughout Israel. If there is no one to save us, we will surrender to you." When the messengers came to Gibeah of Saul and relayed these words in the hearing of the people, they all wept aloud. Just then Saul was returning from the field behind his oxen. "What troubles the people?" asked Saul. "Why are they weeping?" And they relayed to him the words of the men from Jabesh. When Saul heard their words, the Spirit of God rushed upon him, and he burned with great anger. He took a pair of oxen, cut them into pieces, and sent them by messengers throughout the land of Israel, proclaiming, "This is what will be done to the oxen of anyone who does not march behind Saul and Samuel." Then the terror of the Lord fell upon the people, and they turned out as one man. And when Saul numbered them at Bezek, there were 300,000 Israelites and 30,000 men of Judah. So they said to the messengers who had come, "Tell the men of Jabesh Gilead, deliverance will be yours tomorrow by the time the sun is hot." And when the messengers relayed this to the men of Jabesh, they rejoiced. Then the men of Jabesh said to Nahash, "Tomorrow we will come out, and you can do with us whatever seems good to you." The next day Saul organized the troops into 3 divisions, and during the morning watch they invaded the camp of the Ammonites and slaughtered them until the hottest part of the day, and the survivors were so scattered that no 2 of them were left together. Then the people said to Samuel, "Who said that Saul should not reign over us? Bring those men here so we can kill them." But Saul ordered, "No one shall be put to death this day, for today the Lord has worked salvation in Israel." Then Samuel said to the people, "Come, let us go to Gilgal and renew the kingship there." So all the people went to Gilgal and confirmed Saul as king in the presence of the Lord. There they sacrificed peace offerings before the Lord, and Saul and all the Israelites rejoiced greatly. 1 Samuel chapter 12. Then Samuel said to all Israel, I have listened to your voice in all that you have said to me, and I have set over you a king. Now here is the king walking before you, and I am old and gray, and my sons are here with you. I have walked before you from my youth until this day. Here I am. Bear witness against me before the Lord and before his anointed. Whose ox or donkey have I taken? Whom have I cheated or oppressed? From whose hand have I accepted a bribe and closed my eyes? Tell me, and I will restore it to you. You have not wronged us or oppressed us, they replied, nor have you taken anything from the hand of man. Samuel said to them, The Lord is a witness against you, and his anointed is a witness today that you have not found anything in my hand. He is a witness, they replied. Then Samuel said to the people, The Lord is the one who appointed Moses and Aaron, and who brought your fathers up out of the land of Egypt. Now present yourselves so that I may confront you before the Lord with all the righteous acts he has done for you and for your fathers. When Jacob went to Egypt, your fathers cried out to the Lord, and he sent them Moses and Aaron, who brought your fathers out of Egypt and settled them in this place. But they forgot the Lord their God, and he sold them into the hand of Sisera, the commander of the army of Hazor, and into the hands of the Philistines and the king of Moab, who fought against them. When they cried out to the Lord and said, We have sinned, for we have forsaken the Lord and served the Baals and Ashtoreths. Now deliver us from the hands of our enemies, that we may serve you. So the Lord sent Jerubbaal, Barak, Jephthah, and Samuel, and he delivered you from the hands of your enemies on every side, and you dwelt securely. But when you saw that Nahash, king of the Ammonites, was moving against you, you said to me, No, we must have a king to rule over us, even though the Lord your God was your king. Now here is the king you have chosen, the one you requested. Behold, the Lord has placed a king over you. If you fear the Lord and serve him and obey his voice, and if you do not rebel against the command of the Lord, and if both you and the king who reigns over you follow the Lord your God, then all will be well. But if you disobey the Lord and rebel against his command, then the hand of the Lord will be against you as it was against your fathers. Now therefore stand and see this great thing that the Lord will do before your eyes. Is it not the wheat harvest today? I will call on the Lord to send thunder and rain, so that you will know and see what a great evil you have committed in the sight of the Lord by asking for a king. So Samuel called to the Lord, and on that day the Lord sent thunder and rain. As a result, all the people greatly feared the Lord and Samuel. They pleaded with Samuel, Pray to the Lord your God for your servants, so that we will not all die, for we have added to all our sins the evil of asking for a king. Do not be afraid, Samuel replied. Even though you have committed all this evil, do not turn aside from following the Lord, but serve the Lord with all your heart. Do not turn aside after worthless things that cannot profit you or deliver you, for they are empty. Indeed, for the sake of his great name, the Lord will not abandon his people, because he was pleased to make you his own. As for me, far be it from me that I should sin against the Lord by ceasing to pray for you, and I will continue to teach you the good and right way. Above all, fear the Lord and serve him faithfully with all your heart. Consider what great things he has done for you. But if you persist in doing evil, both you and your king will be swept away. 1 Samuel chapter 13. Saul was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned over Israel 42 years. He chose for himself 3,000 men of Israel. 2,000 were with Saul at Michmash and in the hill country of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin. And the rest of the troops he sent away, each to his own home. Then Jonathan attacked the Philistine outpost at Geba, and the Philistines heard about it. So Saul blew the ram's horn throughout the land, saying, "Let the Hebrews hear." And all Israel heard the news. Saul has attacked an outpost of the Philistines, and now Israel has become a stench to the Philistines. Then the people were summoned to join Saul at Gilgal. Now the Philistines assembled to fight against Israel with 3,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and troops as numerous as the sand on the seashore. They went up and camped at Michmash, east of Bethaven. Seeing they were in danger because their troops were hard-pressed, the men of Israel hid in caves and thickets, among the rocks and in cellars and cisterns. Some Hebrews even crossed the Jordan into the land of Gad and Gilead. Saul, however, remained at Gilgal, and all his troops were quaking in fear. And Saul waited 7 days for the time appointed by Samuel, but Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the troops began to desert Saul. So he said, "Bring me the burnt offering and the peace offerings." And he offered up the burnt offering. Just as he finished offering the burnt offering, Samuel arrived, and Saul went out to greet him. "What have you done?" Samuel asked. And Saul replied, "When I saw that the troops were deserting me, and that you did not come at the appointed time, and the Philistines were gathering at Michmash, I thought, now the Philistines will descend upon me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the favor of the Lord. So I completed the burnt offering." "You have acted foolishly," Samuel declared. "You have not kept the command that the Lord your God gave you. If you had, the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel for all time. But now your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought a man after his own heart and appointed him ruler over his people, because you have not kept the command of the Lord." Then Samuel set out from Gilgal and went up to Gibeah in Benjamin. And Saul numbered the troops who were with him, about 600 men. Now Saul and Jonathan his son and the troops with them were staying in Gibeah of Benjamin when the Philistines camped at Michmash. And raiders went out of the Philistine camp in 3 divisions. One headed toward Ophrah in the land of Shaul, another toward Beth-horon, and the third down the border road overlooking the valley of Zeboim facing the wilderness. And no blacksmith could be found in all the land of Israel, because the Philistines had said, "The Hebrews must not be allowed to make swords or spears. Instead, all the Israelites would go down to the Philistines to sharpen their plowshares, mattocks, axes, and sickles." The charge was a pim for sharpening a plowshare or a mattock, a third of a shekel for sharpening a pitchfork or an axe, and a third of a shekel for repointing an ox goad. So on the day of battle, not a sword or spear could be found in the hands of the troops with Saul and Jonathan. Only Saul and his son Jonathan had weapons. And a garrison of the Philistines had gone out to the pass at Michmash. All right, 1 Samuel 14 now. One day Jonathan, son of Saul, said to the young man bearing his armor, "Come, let us cross over to the Philistine outpost on the other side." But Jonathan did not tell his father. Meanwhile, Saul was staying under the pomegranate tree in Migron on the outskirts of Gibeah, and the troops who were with him numbered about 600 men, including Ahijah, who was wearing an ephod. He was the son of Ichabod's brother Ahitub, son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, the priest of the Lord in Shiloh. But the troops did not know that Jonathan had left. Now there were cliffs on both sides of the pass that Jonathan intended to cross to reach the Philistine outpost. One was named Bozez, and the other Seneh. One cliff stood to the north toward Michmash, and the other to the south toward Geba. Jonathan said to the young man bearing his armor, "Come, let us cross over to the outpost of these uncircumcised men. Perhaps the Lord will work on our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few." His armor-bearer replied, "Do all that is in your heart. Go ahead. I am with you, heart and soul." "Very well," said Jonathan. "We will cross over toward these men and show ourselves to them." If they say, 'Wait until we come to you,' then we will stay where we are and will not go up to them. But if they say, 'Come on up,' then we will go up, because this will be our sign that the Lord has delivered them into our hands." So the two of them showed themselves to the outposts of the Philistines, who exclaimed, "Look, the Hebrews are coming out of the holes in which they were hiding." So the men of the outpost called out to Jonathan and his armor-bearer, "Come on up, and we will teach you a lesson." "Follow me," Jonathan told his armor-bearer, "for the Lord has delivered them into the hand of Israel." So Jonathan climbed up on his hands and feet with his armor-bearer behind him, and the Philistines fell before Jonathan, and his armor-bearer followed and finished them off. In that first assault, Jonathan and his armor-bearer struck down about 20 men over an half-acre of land. Then terror struck the Philistines in the camp, in the field, and among all the people. Even those in the outposts and raiding parties trembled. Indeed, the earth quaked, and panic spread from God. Now when Saul's watchmen at Gibeah in Benjamin looked and saw the troops melting away and scattering in every direction, Saul said to the troops who were with him, "Call the roll and see who has left us." And when they had called the roll, they saw that Jonathan and his armor-bearer were not there. Then Saul said to Ahijah, "Bring the ark of God," for at that time it was with the Israelites. While Saul was talking to the priest, the commotion in the Philistine camp continued to increase. So Saul said to the priest, "Withdraw your hand." Then Saul and all his troops assembled and marched to the battle, and they found the Philistines in total confusion, with each man wielding the sword against his neighbor. And the Hebrews, who had previously gone up into the surrounding camps of the Philistines, now went over to the Israelites who were with Saul and Jonathan. When all the Israelites who had been hiding in the hill country of Ephraim heard that the Philistines were fleeing, they also joined Saul and Jonathan in the battle. So the Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle moved on beyond Bethaven. Now the men of Israel were in distress that day, for Saul had placed the troops under an oath, saying, "Cursed is the man who eats any food before evening, before I have taken vengeance on my enemies." So none of the troops tasted any food. Then all the troops entered the forest, and there was honey on the ground. And when they entered the forest, they saw the flowing honey. Not one of them put his hand to his mouth, because they feared the oath. Jonathan, however, had not heard that his father had charged the people with the oath. So he reached out the end of the staff in his hand, dipped it into the honeycomb, and put his hand to his mouth, and his eyes brightened. Then one of the soldiers told him, "Your father bound the troops with a solemn oath, saying, 'Cursed is the man who eats food today.' That is why the people are faint." "My father has brought trouble to the land," Jonathan replied. "Just look at how my eyes have brightened because I tasted a little of this honey. How much better it would have been if the troops had eaten freely today from the plunder they took from their enemies. Would not the slaughter of the Philistines have been much greater?" That day, after the Philistines had struck down the Philistines from Michmash to Aijalon, the people were very faint. So they rushed greedily to the plunder, taking sheep, cattle, and calves. They slaughtered them on the ground and ate meat with the blood still in it. Then someone reported to Saul, "Look, the troops are sinning against the Lord by eating meat with the blood still in it." "You have broken faith," said Saul. "Roll a large stone over here at once." Then he said, "Go among the troops and tell them, each man must bring me his ox or his sheep, slaughter them in this place, and then eat. Do not sin against the Lord by eating meat with the blood still in it." So that night everyone brought his ox and slaughtered it there. Then Saul built an altar to the Lord. It was the first time he had built an altar to the Lord. And Saul said, "Let us go down after the Philistines by night and plunder them until dawn, leaving no man alive." "Do what seems good to you," the troops replied. But the priest said, "We must consult God here." So Saul inquired of God, "Shall I go down after the Philistines? Will you give them into the hand of Israel?" But God did not answer him that day. Therefore Saul said, "Come here, all you leaders of the troops, and let us investigate how this sin has occurred today. As surely as the Lord who saves Israel lives, Even if it is my son Jonathan, he must die." But not one of the troops said a word. Then Saul said to all Israel, "You stand on the one side, and I and my son Jonathan will stand on the other side." "Do what seems good to you," the troops replied. So Saul said to the Lord, the God of Israel, "Why have you not answered your servant this day? If the fault is with me or my son Jonathan, respond with Urim. But if the fault is with the men of Israel, respond with Thummim." And Jonathan and Saul were selected, but the people were cleared of the charge. Then Saul said, "Cast the lot between me and my son Jonathan." And Jonathan was selected. "Tell me what you have done," Saul commanded him. So Jonathan told him, "I only tasted a little honey with the end of the staff that was in my hand. And now I must die?" And Saul declared, "May God punish me, and ever so severely, if you, Jonathan, do not surely die." But the people said to Saul, "Must Jonathan die, he who accomplished such a great deliverance for Israel? Never. As surely as the Lord lives, not a hair of his head will fall to the ground, for with God's help he has accomplished this today." So the people rescued Jonathan, and he did not die. Then Saul gave up his pursuit of the Philistines, and the Philistines returned to their own land. After Saul had assumed the kingship over Israel, he fought against all his enemies on every side: the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Edomites, the kings of Zobah, and the Philistines. Wherever he turned, he routed them. He fought valiantly and defeated the Amalekites, delivering Israel from the hands of its plunderers. Now the sons of Saul were Jonathan, Ishvi, and Malchishua. His two daughters were named Merab, his firstborn, and Michal, his younger daughter. His wife's name was Ahinoam, daughter of Ahimaaz. The name of his commander of his army was Abner, the son of Saul's uncle Ner. Saul's father Kish and Abner's father Ner were sons of Abiel. And the war with the Philistines was fierce for all the days of Saul. So whenever he noticed any strong or brave man, Saul would enlist him. 1 Samuel 15. Then Samuel said to Saul, "The Lord sent me to anoint you king over his people Israel. Now therefore, listen to the words of the Lord. This is what the Lord of hosts says. I witnessed what the Amalekites did to the Israelites when they ambushed them on their way up from Egypt. Now go and attack the Amalekites and devote to destruction all that belongs to them. Do not spare them, but put to death men and women, children and infants, oxen and sheep, camels and donkeys." So Saul summoned the troops and numbered them at Telaim, 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 men of Judah. Saul came to the city of Amalek and lay in wait in the valley. And he warned the Kenites, "Since you showed kindness to all the Israelites when they came up out of Egypt, go on and get away from the Amalekites, otherwise I will sweep you away with them." So the Kenites moved away from the Amalekites. Then Saul struck down the Amalekites all the way from Havilah to Shur, which is east of Egypt. He captured Agag, king of Amalek, alive, but devoted all the others to destruction with the sword. Saul and his troops spared Agag along with the best of the sheep and cattle, the fat calves and lambs, and the best of everything else. They were unwilling to destroy them, but they devoted to destruction all that was despised and worthless. Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel, saying, "I regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned away from following me and has not carried out my instructions." And Samuel was distressed and cried out to the Lord all that night. Early in the morning Samuel got up to confront Saul, but he was told, "Saul has gone up to Carmel, and behold, he has set up a monument for himself and has turned and gone down to Gilgal." When Samuel reached him, Saul said to him, "May the Lord bless you. I have carried out the Lord's instructions." But Samuel replied, "Then what is this bleating of sheep and lowing of cattle that I hear?" Saul answered, "The troops brought them from the Amalekites. They spared the best sheep and cattle to sacrifice to the Lord your God, but the rest we devoted to destruction." "Stop," exclaimed Samuel. "Let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night." "Tell me," Saul replied. And Samuel said, "Although you were once small in your own eyes, have you not become the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you king over Israel and sent you on a mission, saying, 'Go and devote to destruction the sinful Amalekites. Fight against them until you have wiped them out.' So why did you not obey the Lord? Why did you rush upon the plunder and do evil in the sight of the Lord?" "But I did obey the Lord," Saul replied. "I went on the mission that the Lord gave me. I brought back Agag, king of Amalek, and devoted the Amalekites to destruction." The troops took sheep and cattle from the plunder, the best of the things devoted to destruction, in order to sacrifice them to the Lord your God at Gilgal. But Samuel declared, "Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obedience to his voice? Behold, obedience is better than sacrifice, and attentiveness is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, and arrogance is like the wickedness of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king." Then Saul said to Samuel, "I have sinned. I have transgressed the Lord's commandment and your instructions, because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. Now, therefore, please forgive my sin and return with me so I can worship the Lord." "I will not return with you," Samuel replied, "for you have rejected the word of the Lord, and he has rejected you as king over Israel." As Samuel turned to go, Saul grabbed the hem of his robe, and it tore. So Samuel said to him, "The Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and has given it to your neighbor who is better than you. Moreover, the glory of Israel does not lie or change his mind, for he is not a man that he should change his mind." "I have sinned," Saul replied. "Please honor me now before the elders of my people and before Israel. Come back with me so that I may worship the Lord your God." So Samuel went back with Saul, and Saul worshipped the Lord. Then Samuel said, "Bring me Agag, king of the Amalekites." Agag came to him cheerfully, for he thought, "Surely the bitterness of death is past." But Samuel declared, "As your sword has made women childless, so your mother will be childless among women." And Samuel hacked Agag to pieces before the Lord at Gilgal. Then Samuel went to Ramah, but Saul went up to his home in Gibeah of Saul. And to the day of his death, Samuel never again visited Saul. Samuel mourned for Saul, and the Lord regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel. That's it for 1 Samuel today. Now we do Psalm 10. Why, O Lord, do you stand afar off? Why do you hide in times of trouble? In pride the wicked pursue the needy. Let them be caught in the schemes they devise. For the wicked man boasts in the cravings of his heart. He blesses the greedy and reviles the Lord. In his pride the wicked man does not seek him. In all his schemes there is no God. He is secure in his ways at all times. Your lofty judgments are far from him. He sneers at all his foes. He says to himself, "I will not be moved. From age to age I am free of distress." His mouth is full of cursing, deceit, and malevolence. And violence. Trouble and malice are under his tongue. He lies in wait near the villages. In ambush he slays the innocent. His eyes watch in stealth for the helpless. He lies in wait like a lion in a thicket. He lurks to seize the oppressed. He catches the lowly in his net. They are crushed and beaten down. The hapless fall prey to his strength. He says to himself, God has forgotten. He hides his face and never sees. Arise, O Lord. Lift up your hand, O God. Do not forget the helpless. Why has the wicked man renounced God? He says to himself, you will never call me to account. But you have regarded the trouble and grief. You see to repay it by your hand. The victim entrusts himself to you. You are the helper of the fatherless. Break the arm of the wicked and evildoer. Call him to account for his wickedness until none is left to be found. The Lord is king forever and ever. The nations perish from his land. You have heard, O Lord, the desire of the humble. You will strengthen their hearts. You will incline your ear to vindicate the fatherless and oppressed, that the men of the earth may strike terror no more. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, so we're done for today, and we got 2 anecdotes today of why Saul displeased the Lord. And I would remind you the passage that we covered of how Moses lost his right to go into the promised land. The Lord requires absolute obedience, not that we do what's right in our own eyes or what makes sense to us, but that we do what he says with perfectly submissive spirits. So, meditate on these things. That concludes our time together today. I'll see you tomorrow. Blessings.